Split here. Yeah. Oh, sorry. All right, guys, it's 10:30. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the special meeting of the BET that was posted on July 1, 2025. Roll call. Looks like we've got primary members except for the assessor's office. We've got Marcy in here as the alternate. Let's see here. We've got one item today, and it is item number 1, discussion possible action regarding the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority budget for FY26. Greg, I believe you're emailing a PowerPoint. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you need that PowerPoint to get started? Do we want to wait for that?
It's just, I had one piece of the presentation. You can start with someone else and I'll get this going. Mine's a general overview, basically. Doesn't get into detail.
What's going to make the most sense for us to start with your presentation or another piece? Because I don't know what your presentation looks like.
Yeah, it's basically a high level overview of how we got to where we are. So I think
Probably start with yours. Okay. All right, so we'll wait for just a minute. How's everybody's fourth? Everybody back with 10 fingers and 12 toes?
Sure.
So that's the planning one time. You have 12 toes? I was like, yeah, I didn't know my arms. Just this makes swimming easier.
Are they wet?
If they're wet.
It can be.
And that would be weird. I mean, we'd still like
It's,
it.
I appreciate it.
Just keep your shoes
Are there any?
Right.
She's close to it. She's not going to.
Cody,
No flip-flops.
are you aware, are we gonna receive any other handouts or documents so that we might begin to review those while we're waiting on this presentation?
Do you guys have handouts that you're going to,
It's current year budget.
the current year updated? So it's different than the one that you passed out for estimate of needs?
Right.
Okay, go ahead and pass that out if you would, see. All right, the chair will ask the clerk's office to make this document a part of the record unless there's an objection. Without an objection, I will make that request. All right, you have another one of those, see, we will need one for the clerk.
Yeah.
Greg, do you have a copy of this? That
No.
he just passed
I
out?
only have one.
I can give it mine.
Okay, well, can you make it digitally available to the clerk's office?
Yeah.
Can you email this to them?
Yeah.
Looks like there's 2 documents we're gonna have made
Three.
part of the record. 3. Okay. So be sure and email all 3 of those because it looks like there is not a copy of the first. Correct. Sure. Greg, is this what you were waiting for?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Greg Couch. I'm the Chief of Infrastructure Technologies for the Oklahoma County Detention Center. I've been in that role since February of this year. So this is a very basic, broad, general presentation. If you have specific questions about any figures or if you want to drill down into any details, I'll refer to either our finance guy, C, or the CEO, Mr. Tippett. So this is simply a presentation of the facts that I know them to be at this time. It is not a deep dive, so we'll start with the next slide. The first thing I wanted to just talk about is the budget imbalance. We requested for fiscal year 25, our request is 42.1 million. And for the fiscal year, we were approved for 33.7 million. I've been led to believe that we've been flat funded for 3 years, and that's despite inflation and rising service costs, which I'll get into next. Next slide, please. So I understand that we contracted with a company called Turnkey for our medical services. That cost us $8.1 million a year, and that covers salary, medical, and office supplies, those services. We paid Turnkey an additional $840,000 to reimburse them for offsite medical costs, bills that they paid on our behalf. Next slide.
Greg, before
Yes.
you move off that slide, do you know on that 8.1 million, how many employees that Turnkey was utilizing to run those services?
I believe it was, I have the numbers. I may not be able to get to them right now, but I believe it was when we took over the services, they were underbilled by about 12 or 13 FTEs. Don't hold me to that number, but it's around 12 or 13, and they had 63 at that time. So that would be.
So they were funded at 75 at that 8.1.
It was
70.8.
70.80. That's the number. They, in the contract, it said 70.80 FTEs for those services, and I believe when we took that over, they were down to 63.
Okay, but they were funded for the 70.8.
Correct.
That's FTEs. Was there any funding for part-time or seasonal?
I don't know.
There's a few part-time, and then the 63 FTE, few of them were vacant at the time. But they were.
I get the vacancy. I'm not necessarily concerned about that because we're talking about a funding standpoint right now, right? So it's what they were funded for. They had enough in their contract to cover 70.80 FTEs. How many part-time?
I do not know the answer to that.
Can you get that for us, please?
Yes.
Not this very moment.
Right.
But we will need that. Thank you. Or I will need that at least. Joe, did you have something?
Yeah, you happen to know, in the past, when we've had contracts, and Brandon may be able to help me, when we've had contracts with medical providers, we've known what the cost escalation would be heading into the next year. For instance, it's 5%, right? So when you all made the decision to eliminate Turnkey, did we have an idea, had we continued with Turnkey, what that cost would have been?
I was not involved in this negotiation for the contract. I don't know a whole lot about it. I have been told that Turnkey terminated the contract.
Well,
It did
However-
go up every year gradually.
What was the escalation percentage in the contract? Because that was in the contract, I'm certain.
whoever terminated, what was the escalation percentage? I can pull that.
I don't remember, but one of the year when we did come to BET to ask for the supplement, that one year we were asking for $62,693, and that was approved. And the contract cost that went up, so we came to BET that year, and then that was for $62,693.
Greg, can you get us that escalation provision as well, please?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
I have
Yes.
Yeah, while we're on
Oh,
this,
go ahead.
go ahead, Chuck.
And then you pointed out several times that when you took over, Turnkey was at 63. Given the history of the negotiations and whoever terminated the contract, were people leaving because of the uncertainty as to the contract status? In other words, had they stayed near the full funding level until all of these discussions came along?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I do not know.
See, do you know the answer to that?
It was pretty close to that number, and during the transition, and Donna Hanson, she provided the staffing information from Turnkey, and then that's what we tried to put together how many FTE that we can staff.
Donna, do you recall how the staffing numbers were allocated through the transition period and the short portion before?
I believe that's my memory that we lost two because they didn't want to take the urine drug screen to come over to the county. I I believe there were 2 people that didn't come over.
Okay, but prior to the conversations about whether turnkey was going to stay, whether they were going to go, because that was kind of going on, bubbling behind the scenes for a little bit, right? Before that, was turnkey and your medical staff, were you guys pretty well fully staffed? I mean, you're going to have some, bumps here and there, but by and large, were you hitting at about that 70.8 number?
It was much better, so yes, we were much closer to that.
Okay.
While we're on turnkey, the 840,000, obviously, the offsite medical and drug costs is by usage, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so our 8.1 million, what is our total cost, apples to that?
That's the next slide.
Okay, even better.
So here's the numbers when we brought it in-house, the medical costs in-house. For salary, medical, and all supplies to kind of make that, match the contract, 7.05 million. Our CFO negotiated the contract then with Heritage for medical billing, which I assume was included in the original 8.1 for turnkey. That was a service they provided up and over the salaries and things. So that was negotiated with a company called Heritage. Heritage paid 4.52 million in offsite medical and $504,000 in costs. So that the difference is 3.13 million. It costs us 3.13 million to bring that in-house.
But so help me make sense of this. When Turnkey was running it, Turnkey was negotiating what those outside expenses were. They weren't expenses due payable to Turnkey, right? I mean, Turnkey was part of their contract, may have been the negotiation with the third-party providers, but the bills that we were paying, the $800,000, was going to the third-party providers. It may have been going to Turnkey and then Turnkey sending it on to the third-party provider, but the payment was due to the third party.
We paid turnkey, we paid the pharmacy and then directly, but we paid turnkey for the offsite medical.
Right, and then Turnkey turned around and paid the third-party provider. So my question is, how did it go from 800,000? It's not like Turnkey was, given a bigger discount or something like that, because they weren't the provider that was ultimately getting a lot of the $800,000. How did we go from 800,000 to 4.52 million when the costs should be, in my mind, similar because it's offsite and offsite? You get what I'm saying?
So, yeah, that is the question we're trying to get to as well. That's a great question. I don't know. What we think happened is, and we're trying to confirm, we have to go through all of Heritage's billing, all of Turnkey's billing, to determine if Heritage overpaid or paid things that we were not responsible to pay. For instance, if it was a pre-existing condition or something, or an incarceration fit examination, we're not responsible for those costs per state statute. So that's going to be a whole financial analysis of those records.
Okay, so to that point then, you're saying that you're going to run out of money, or you said you're going to run out of money on July 31st, but yet what I think I heard you say is, we may have overpaid, and if we did, we're going to get funds back. Is that?
I'm saying,
And how long will that process take?
I'm saying we may have overpaid, but I don't know that. I don't know that. We don't know that yet. We may have, because it doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
Why such an increase?
I could take a guess what happened, but I'll wait a while.
Go ahead.
I'll let you continue. But, so if you did in fact overpay, then we would receive funds back, which would.
I think that'd be the right thing. Yes, I think, all I know to do is turn this over to the attorneys at this point and let them go through the contract, see if there was a breach of contract or.
And then I have a question.
Sure.
On the negotiation of the contract with Heritage, how was Heritage selected?
I have no idea. I was not in the position that I'm in now, and I'm not the CFO.
Where is your CFO?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So Any more questions? I know there's lots of questions, but any more on this slide?
I just have a couple comments.
Sure.
When the first budget was presented to us in May, it was aware of the possible overage. We were told that they were working on it already,
That was my
and that
question.
it was roughly $240,000 times about 4 months. And so to hear today that we need to start an investigation, we need to turn it over to the attorneys, that's
That's $1 million, right?
I was gonna say, I thought there was like $1 million overage.
and then there was like a $40,000 in.
Yeah. So my follow-up was similar to hers, that you had, that your group had mentioned this potential issue with Heritage versus turnkey when you presented your estimate of needs a few months ago, correct? How much further along in this investigation are you from when we had that initial conversation?
Since the estimate needs, and then we were able to go back and do the adjustment. And at the time when I was doing the budget, and we were doing the projection based on what we paid Heritage, which is about at least 200,000 a month. And when I had that line item, I had that number higher. That's why the estimate of needs a lot higher at the time, was 8.4 million. And then when we go back and look at everything and finding out more about why are we spending so much bill on Heritage, and I noticed that the payroll money, we're supposed to use unused payroll money to pay. No, that was for the VHS. It's not about the medical. Sorry, I got this confused. Yeah, but the that one was still in there, so I haven't changed anything on the medical. So it's still on the. Not sure.
I'm sure the 81.
Yeah, right here. That's one. Yeah, it's still there.
So
So
not
that
to
can be
jump,
lowered?
No, that was last year. So that's what we're asking for the new year. It's high because of Heritage. That's what we're paying them.
see, not to jump too far ahead, but you had just mentioned, I know this is gonna be a question a lot of people are gonna have. You started to say you used
Yeah,
unused payroll dollars. to
track
pay
that.
this.
Yeah.
That's a question, because there's potentially millions of dollars out there that you guys are not paying, that we've allocated for you for salaries and benefits. But since you're short on employees, we still fund you like you have 100% of them. So that is going to be a question, I'm sure, that's going to come up from many people
Yes.
around the table.
Yes, yeah. Let me I stayed back because I got confused between the medical and then the what we spend on the professional staff to do the site check. Yeah. There are two different issues there. So we still have this in here, and that's why 3.1 million that we still need to pay for offsite medical and pharmacy, the drug costs.
How is Heritage paid? Is it a flat rate, or are they paid based on a certain percentage of claims they pay, or is it a flat?
I'm not sure
Or
what the whole process,
was
what
it
they
flat
did. Yeah. I don't have time to really go in and do an investigation on all the bills, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
Well, because you had a contract with Heritage, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that was a set dollar amount. If it wasn't,
No. They process it and then they pay, and then they let us know how much they pay, and then we reimburse them.
It was open-ended.
that's why I would imagine. I
Oh, yeah,
was just making the assumption it was probably based on the number of claims paid. Which,
Yeah, there's
My
no cap.
understanding that it's $45 per invoice.
okay, I figured there was like
The fee
per-
process, yeah.
So that's benefits them.
So, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So you guys have a contract with a
For
provider
each process,
that is,
it's $40.
that incentivizes that contract provider to process bills. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does make sense that we would do that?
No,
Your
I thought you
statement
asked what
makes
your
sense.
statement.
My statement makes sense, then I had a follow-up.
That's my same question.
Are all these contracts going across the trust agenda?
From what I understand, they must.
They must, or they are?
They must.
And you say Heritage paid 4.52 million in offsite. How much have you paid?
I have that.
That number is based on the projection, and that's why I come up. These are annualized numbers. So
But that, it says Heritage paid 4.52. That, to me, that verbiage does not indicate a projection. That indicates a definite known expenditure. Paid is past tense.
And then
it's a projection on what we paid.
So that statement would be more
Yeah, we try
accurate.
to
It
show
is,
you. We try
it
to
is
use that.
projected, it is
Yeah.
projected that Heritage will pay 4.52.
Yeah, that way you can see the true difference of the how much we paid.
Well, but do you understand where I'm getting at though? Because if it's a projection, then we don't know for sure where that's gonna settle out. This document indicates that that is a known number, that they've already paid that and that's out the door.
Yeah, that,
It's
it could be a wording problem. It could be a second, English as a second language problem. I'm trying to help see with the presentation here. So that could have been my oversight. It might not have been a good communication between C and myself.
So it
So-
hadn't been paid. That's
what-
correct?
So that's what you're asking. I assumed it was. So do we need to go find that out?
no, it's not all paid. It's just a projection.
How much has been?
I have it with me right now.
So I'll add
That'd be a
that.
nice number to have.
You don't, see, you don't have, I mean, this is a huge part of this.
I have that number.
issue.
It's not with me right now, but I'll be glad to provide that because I'm not going to give you a number that's not true, but I need to confirm.
Well, you gave us this number?
That's just a projection, so I corrected that.
Okay.
The reason why it's a correct annualized number, we just want to show the difference on what we pay turnkey and how much that would cost us, and that's why.
But you're still in the analysis phase. You don't know what it's gonna cost you yet.
Well, based on what we've been paying them, and I use a number, the average number what we pay monthly, and do as an annual projection.
on the estimate needs you've got for the on-site medical, you've got last year's FY 24-25 is 8.1 million, and then your 25-26 is 840. Is
Yes, because we still have all these other supplies and services that we're still paying.
Greg, can you help me with something?
Yes.
Carry that.
So I think what I heard C say just a second ago was that the $4.52 million
7.1.
was determined by the amount per month that you've been paying Heritage, and that is just extrapolated over a 12-month period to get to the 4.52. Is that what I just heard?
Like you took the last
What
few
we
months,
paid so
averaged
far.
it out, and projected to the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay, so my follow-up to that is, if you have such grave concerns that the numbers that Heritage is providing is not accurate, and you're doing this investigation because you think that those numbers may be way out of line and we shouldn't be paying that, why are we paying that? Because while we may not have paid the 4.52, we're paying the derivative thereof on a monthly basis. What if this is under investigation and you're trying to determine if that is valid or not? Why are we paying that until that issue is settled?
Can't answer that. I'm not the CFO who would have approved those payments, and I have the same question.
I'm not trying to beat you up, Greg. I understand you are not the CFO.
I'm just telling the truth today. That's all I got. I mean, I don't know why. It does not make any sense.
Greg,
Sir.
follow up on the heritage issue. Have we noticed a change in behavior since they're under investigation in terms of the number of invoices that we're receiving versus what had previously been paid?
Well, first, let me make sure that I don't say that they're under investigation.
Well, we're auditing.
Yeah, it needs
It's
to
probably
be.
a better
Yeah,
word.
it needs to be audited.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have insight into the daily functions of finance. Okay. But maybe he can answer. Has Heritage been the difference in how they've been?
No, there's no communication with them saying anything. That we haven't said anything right now. We just this is what we found out internally.
Well, we've had public meetings that you referenced that we were auditing to make sure we weren't paying over what we should actually be paying or Heritage was. So I would assume that they're aware. So my question is, have we seen a change in behavior with respect to their billing?
No.
Which gets to Cody's question of,
No.
if we have reason to believe that we're paying more, why are we continuing to pay the invoices?
Who on your end is the one that's reaching out to Heritage, trying to verify these numbers and asking the hard-pointed questions?
It's the CFO's responsibility. That's not the answer. I believe was you or someone that you had put in charge of doing that, looking into the medical bills to see if they were really ours to pay. Can you
So-
speak to that?
What transpired, Turkey was exceptionally good and had access to OU health records, St. Anthony's health records, etc. And they would not pay payment based on a pre-existing condition. And as you know, if you have, say, diabetes, it has a plethora of other diagnoses that go along with that. So they were very good at locating a pre-existing condition, so they didn't have to exhaust through their $120,000 a month. Since then, we have found out about the state statute that if there is a pre-existing condition, then we're not liable for the bill, if you will. Heritage was hired. This is my case manager for all offsite medical. Because we were getting bills that didn't belong to us. The inmate wasn't even incarcerated at the time, but it was the last known address from the time previously that they went to the hospital. So we would still get a bill. So we have a RN looking into each and every bill that we get on site, not that Heritage, the bills that Heritage gets directly. Because in our core computer system, we have years and years and years of history. So we get a lot from there. We also have access to OU. So we're able to better distinguish if it's a fit for incarceration so that they're healthy enough to be booked in. We don't pay those bills because they're prior to them becoming ours. And then Denise can speak to the Heritage where they just sent her an Excel spreadsheet and asked her basically, in my opinion, to do the majority of their work. So it's gotten quite messy and we're trying to work through some things to better distinguish and have a RN review the bills for medical necessity and move forward. Did I make things muddy the water even more?
Well, it just makes me question even more why we're paying a company to do that when it sounds like we're without expertise, I'm assuming, trying to go in and do the job that I would think that we were paying them.
Well, the RN is a trauma ICU nurse, so that's good for the evaluation to link up pre-existing condition, if need be. If not, then the bill is ours and it gets sent off to be paid of the bills that I get currently. So Denise just got an Excel spreadsheet of how many for her to do the homework on.
Check and see if they were in our custody at that time.
Is that all you're checking, is if they were in custody?
Also check to see if it's something pre-existing. If it happened while they're in custody,
So you're going through the
I
OU?
just what they're, not OU, through what Heritage sends. They send me a list of names with the date of the record that they want paid. And I look into it to see if it's a pre-existing or if it happened during incarceration.
Have you guys, and they very well, I could understand if they were not interested in this at all, but have you guys reached out to Turnkey to ask them if where they received their information, how they were able to do such a good job, and maybe if they're not willing at this time for particular reasons, if they're not running the medical piece of the jail, if they have a piece of their business that they would contract with us to be able to provide at least that service?
So when Turnkey would go through the bills and determine if they were going to be paid, if they were eligible to be paid, that really hindered our ability to send people offsite for medical care because providers weren't getting paid. They didn't want to accept our patients. That really put us in harm's way and was not good for our patient care.
Well, the same individuals, but for them being incarcerated, if they showed up to the emergency room for the same medical condition that they had in the facility, would they have had the discretion to turn them away?
Well,
They would not.
you
They
can't
would not.
turn away somebody that's sick.
Right. But you're saying they're turning them away.
They wouldn't even, like for a follow-up appointment, they wouldn't even acknowledge. They just said, no, thank you. Even with a letter of guarantee from my prior employer guaranteeing payment, they still wouldn't get paid. So that has made it very difficult for us to have our patients in the community, to provide that community standard of care that we're required to do.
Not in the emergency room.
Yeah, I think that rule of thumb only applies.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what I thought. A lot of the primary care being provided in-house, and the emergency care was a lot of that off-site.
We have a lot of people that go on-site for other reasons.
There's like ortho, fractures, we can't handle those in-house. So they need to have a follow-up and
We're like a urgent care.
Right.
Were those conditions previously being treated in-house, those follow-ups, et cetera, were those previously being conducted when we had a contract medical provider? And since my time here, I think we've had 3, so I'm not speaking to one specifically, but were those situations handled under that medical contract?
So we're
Generally handled?
We're an ambulatory care clinic, so we would do like some stitches, or we make loose some things, or our x-ray comes in twice a week, our OBGYN comes in once a week. We provide many of the services on site, but not everything can be done on site.
But under the old way with a contract medical provider, if I needed an ortho, were those services being offered in-house? Were we having a broader spectrum of services offered in-house under the contract, and we're now having to provide the outside, off-site medical?
No, in fact, at one of our last meetings last week, we were talking about using like just St. Anthony's and having a different appointment type every day to do one-stop shopping, a guarantee of payment, and then it'd be advantageous for custody too, because they would need less people to take them to their various appointments across the city. So we're trying to bridge that gap also, or initiate care there as a one-stop shopping. But I don't know of any provider that's been at Oklahoma County that does it all under one roof.
We had a lot of offsite care even back in our day. Certainly not.
Not at this level, though,
Yeah.
right? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, people are really, really sick, drugs are smaller and stronger. So.
Do you know when Heritage came in? Was it at the time the turnkey separated?
No,
So-
before that.
Okay.
So, and just real quick, while we're on this slide, you've got a difference of 3.13 million.
Based on those numbers, yes.
Okay. The previous slide said the offsite medical and drug cost was 840,000. If I math on the next page,
But they're factored in the.
They're taking the
base
81
contract,
plus
too.
the 840 minus
Oh, okay.
705.
81 minus.
4.52 and 504, correct.
All
not
But the
the offsite.
8.1 and the 840 was the budget for a full year when Turnkey still had it. They left in October.
But one thing I was gonna say was, I mean, and I don't even know that that's a full collection of the cost, because if I remember right, on line item 54037 back in the M&O portion of your budget, there was an increase of prisoner care cap of $1.5 million, or the line item, there's 54455, the professional services other, there was a requested increase of $2 million. If I remember right, I think that's for the Heritage piece. I want to say I remember somebody saying the Heritage piece was a $2 million contract, but maybe I'm wrong.
Could that be the VHS, the biomed staffing that we were using for site checks because we were short, or?
I don't
That's
think,
a-
I think that's an
you know,
additional.
That's a separate line.
That's a separate
That's
line.
our
Okay.
5445.
Yeah.
That was the,
So
that's
I-
VH.
So I thought I'd remember.
That was based on when I did the projection back up to March, but now I have the more accurate number since.
So even since March, when there was a projection of 2.4, it's gone up. I mean, it's doubled since March. The projection.
So for the actual numbers since October of 24, we paid almost 3.5 million to Heritage.
And Heritage is acting as a, right? Is that what you mean by that? So you're paying Heritage, they're paying the bills?
On the outpatient.
Any more questions on this slide?
Yes, I
I
mean,
mean, you're the expert for a while. I mean, what's the most we've paid an offsite here? 5 years? I mean, is it anywhere near that 5 million?
I'm not in billing, I don't see the bills until recently. But I can tell you, like, Oklahoma City's #1 in the country for HIV. Vic Harvey's $7,500 for 1 month.
Sure.
It's incredible. Prices are going up, salaries are going up, and my staffing level's going down. It's dangerous there.
Yeah. Well, and I certainly get that. I mean, of the inflation aspect of it. But I mean, when you're talking, I mean, because I think last year was like 800,000-ish off. I thought I've slept a lot since then. So I mean, I don't want to quote those numbers, but I mean, but from 800 to 5 million, that's a giant increase. I mean, I'd imagine cases of.
I have cancer patients there.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
it just doesn't stop. Dialysis,
Yeah.
cardiology,
Do
OB.
you feel like you have more of those? I mean, like those AAAs and all the stuff that you have that come in.
People are sicker. That's it. And all I want is them medically stable enough to be there. I have a physician there Monday through Thursday. I have an APR in there Monday through Friday. But they're sicker. I don't know how else to explain it.
so we've seen basically an increase by 5 times the amount of folks that need that kind of care. Because that's what we're talking, 6 times, actually.
If
800,000 versus 5 million.
if you make the assumption, and I see where you're going, if you make the assumption that $840,000 was the max that we owed for offsite medical and that those bills were paid, I mean, we're making an assumption that they paid the bills. I think we mentioned earlier that there were some hospitals that, or maybe we didn't mention that were going to not see, like, these appointments that we're not calling back, these offsite follow-up visits and things like that because some bills weren't paid.
It is truly horrible and labor intensive to get somebody an offsite medical appointment for medical necessity, not even a medical necessity, because if not, they're gonna die.
Of these, brings me to another issue that will dovetail into this then. Medical ORs. Have we seen an increase in those, or have we seen a reduction? How many of the people, the individuals who are charged with the most serious of crimes, I understand they may not receive a medical OR, but of this population that we're talking about, that is of the sickest of the sick, are we getting any relief in the medical OR side of things?
So I probably write in excess of 30 medical ORs there. Those people that are likely to decline significantly while they're housed at the jail, I don't want them there. We have been exceptionally successful in getting the majority of those people out. So yes, we do write medical vigorously. And those are just medical side that, then there's a security component where they also write medical ORs.
I was just going to mention our chief of detentions is not here, but constantly when we hear that somebody's really bad in health in our facility, he's on the phone calling the judge. Will you please, we need to get this guy or person OR medically because it's just a dangerous thing for them to be all the time, as much as we can.
And when you said 30.
And we're still not
30 per
experiencing
month?
a decrease in cost.
Correct.
I don't see that.
Doesn't seem to correspond.
He's asking if we've seen a decrease in cost after the medical OR.
No.
Is this unique to our area? Like, what does Douglas County pay for medical? For example, the idea that, is there like maybe some comps out there to see?
So
This is
I come from
unique to us.
California. I did 25 years at Orange County Jail. I was an auditor for years. I can speak to this business very well. There are big differences here that we could probably implement to reduce our costs. We're just not there yet. But we do everything that we possibly can to keep our population healthy. We have nurses see you at intake. In other little jails around this state, they have officers do intake screenings. They have officers pass meds. They have officers do your diabetic finger stick and give you insulin. Not exactly what I prefer, but we do an exceptional job. And just under my reign, we've reduced deaths from 20 something a year, much lower. Drugs are smaller and stronger.
Yeah.
People stay out, don't get help or don't get the negative attention of the police to get arrested. But in a lot of that, we saved our life. But yes, there are other things that we can do. I'm looking at changing our lab to a local vendor, which will be at a cost savings. We've already talked about changing our mail order pharmacy. That should help a little bit. We are truly doing everything that we can as of this moment to keep our population healthy and keep our doors open at a decent level of care.
Are we having any issues sending people out to offset? We still are, even with the increased payments.
It's not as bad, but I used to work for Turnkey at Cleveland County and I experienced it down there too.
Yeah.
I think part of it is we're looking at two completely different models. I mean, before, when it was turnkey, the 800,000 in offsite, if memory serves correct, I wasn't here for all three. I think I've been here for two of the medical providers. But the 800,000 was part of their contract. It was negotiated, and so turnkey did what they could to manage those bills to fit within what they had contracted for. It was $800,000. So if the costs were more than that, they ate it. I mean, it was kind of an insurance on our side that that kind of protected us, right? I mean, that was part of the negotiation.
I don't know when that's not been the case that I remember. So, I mean, back when I negotiated turnkey, when the very first time they came in, now they are separate. There's a base salary and then the offsite cap. But specifically in our contracts, if they went over, they billed us. And they were happy to send us.
But we had the cap overage that was negotiated.
So after Turnkey left, I had vendors reach out to us for tour and maybe give us a little quote to help us out, right? Between 16 and 22 million a year.
No, I know. I mean, we had
It's not gonna be cheap.
a pretty good deal before, and now we've got a vendor that is kind of the opposite side. The way the structure is set up, it's motivating for them to submit as many bills as they possibly can. It's, you got salary employee versus an hourly employee. You pay somebody, you want your deck built, you know, if you pay them a set amount or an hourly amount, I mean,
I had the same question.
it may take longer, the price may be different.
I've seen some contracts I have a lot of questions about.
So my question to that is, why are you here and why are you not before the trust themselves so that they can ask these same type of questions about these contracts?
I'm a boss. I'm a boss, sir. And
I'm
right there.
again, I'm not, you're the guy answering the questions.
Sure.
But I mean, just in the last trust meeting, I think, you all, the trust, passed a contract that crossed fiscal years, and yet you're saying you're broke. You started a contract that picked up, I think it was April through the end of this FY, and then into the next FY. That doesn't happen, but it did. And so I think for me, and it sounds like some of the others, we're all trying to make sense of these numbers that seem to continually change, right? This group is being audited in May, but yet today we're no further along and we don't know anymore. And so it makes it difficult for at least me to understand how we're going to be out of money on July 31st. And then there are some other statements that I'll call on the press that I just would like to get to. So, but
All right, let's go ahead and move on through.
so
I apologize, I have no idea what this is.
You're trying to make up some time.
Clearly. Still no idea. I'm closing it.
I can probably speak to that slide from a piece of paper. So the next slide was going to be talking about our cash position. I just got this figure from our finance people. Fiscal year 24 began with a it's actually 2.5. That's my mistake. Fiscal year began with a $2.5 million carryover. And then after we absorbed all those costs of the offsite medical and everything, it just ate it all up. It's just gone. Just ate all that. Are we back to the screen? No, I think.
Can I add something to that? For FY 25, we were able to balance our budget. It was because of 2.5 carry over money from the year before, and also Oklahoma City paid us the $750,000 from 2 years ago, and then they are current on their bill. So with that money, 1.2 million for FY 25 from Oklahoma City, FY 24 750,000, and the carryover money. That's how we're able to balance our budget for FY 25.
Well, see, I think this slide kind of speaks to, I think, some people's trepidation on the numbers. This here talks about FY 24 began with $2.1 million, you said 2.5 in rollover from the previous year. But if memory serves correct, a few months before the end of last fiscal year, we were told that you guys were going to be short like millions of dollars for
FY 26.
for that year. And then it turned out that not only were you not short, that you actually had a rollover balance.
From FY 25.
Yeah.
That was because previous year because I haven't paid all the July invoices. It's for the trust meeting next week, and that's going to be about 1.3 million.
I get it. I'm just saying that
So
we've had huge fluctuation in the numbers that we've been told month to month in the past.
Yeah, that's only cover the expenses for July, and so what we receive in July is to pay all the bills, and we don't pay the bills until the trust meeting in August, and payroll by end of the July.
Joe,
what
Joe,
you
do you
see
remember
in
what I'm talking about? Remember the grand jury report or something where it was said that they were going to be, what was it, like 2.75 million?
and yes,
That you guys were going to be $2.75 million short to finish out that year. And we were questioning where that was coming from. And you kind of held to that. You were going to be short those dollars. And then when it actually came to fruition, you weren't short the 2.75. You had over $2 million of reserve that you didn't spend out of your budget. So it's almost a $5 million swing. That's where some people have concerns when the numbers are presented to us.
See what happened. Okay, so you began FY 24 2.1 million cash. What did you begin FY 25 with?
the carryover money.
Yeah, so like you say here that you started FY 24 2.1. So that's obviously gone. What did you start FY 25 with?
Yeah. That's the carryover money for FY.
Should that say FY 25 and
Yeah,
not
that's
FY?
FY 25. The beginning of FY.
I got you. Okay. So I just thought you were taking this like history like 2 years ago.
No, that should be beginning of FY.
but this story rings true, as Cody said. You go back previous years and where we've been told or projected that you would have no carryover over revenues, you've had those, right? The grand jury report recommendations came out in March or April of 23, right? So we started 24 with, I think Cody's right, around $2 million.
FY. Yeah.
And you're starting FY '26 with 2 million in carryover.
No, that was FY 25.
Right, I get that.
Yeah.
But aren't you
For
starting
the
26 with 2
No,
million?
no, we don't. It will show on that. We probably have around the 1.3, but that's to pay all the bills, all the June bills that will be paid next week at the trust meeting.
Well, see,
Then you wouldn't have.
we've talked about this before. I've offered this suggestion both at the beginning of the fiscal year and during the fiscal year, and we've actually done this during fiscal years in the past. The question is it a budget issue or is it a cash flow issue? Because if it's a cash flow issue of you getting a 12th of your budget, mentioning having to, pay those bills in July, we can always look at, now it gets a little more difficult at the beginning of the fiscal year, but we can always look at, instead of funding you at 12 to 12 to 12, we can kind of ease up your cash flow issues if it is a cash flow issue by providing more than 1 month of allocation.
It will be a cash flow issue after by end of July. Yeah. So we will not have enough money to pay all our bills in July. But we don't pay those bills until the second week of the trust meeting. So when you look at the numbers with pull up millionaires right now, you show the carryover money that shows in there, but those money, the 1.3 million in there, is to pay all the bills from June. But the trust meeting is not until next Monday. So this money, after we pay payroll, after we pay the last 10 days of payroll, and I have 1.3 million left. And that will be used to pay all the bills from June next week.
So it's encumbered.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Your
the way we
total-
do, if I'm understanding correctly, you're showing this carryover actually expenditures that when we're doing our budget process, we take care of. So our carryover is our true anticipated carryover, right? I have to have reserves to cover my expenses through June 30th. And I account for that before I even give a projection on what my carryover is. You're not doing that.
Not this year, because previous year when the trust meeting has been moved to the second Monday.
It shouldn't have anything to do with.
Right, because I don't have we pay monthly on everything, and a lot of bills don't come in until the last day of the month or the first day, but we don't do the requisition until right the first
So are
week
you
of-
using FY $26 to pay FY '25 bills?
Sound like that, but it's not, because that money, it's already encumbered to pay the bills.
How can you uncover FY '26 money if you don't have it?
I'm trying to understand,
So, yeah.
what. I don't have insight.
Can I give a minute, Christine? So when we receive the money at the end of the month, so this is what we will receive on the deposit we do every year. And after we receive all that, this is my balance. And I pay payroll the full month. Okay, and the last estimate. So this is what we have left by end of the fiscal year, the June 30th, after we pay payroll. But these are to pay all the bills that we spend, we receive in June, but we don't pay them until. Yeah, it's paid already. So this is what we have. And so we have all those bills that we received in June, but I didn't do the requisition because we're still paying on. And we do that in the first week of July.
Right, but those bills don't include. Right.
No, like all the bills is gonna be 1.3 million. So these are
Now it's 2.3 million.
not
You
union.
need to pay that to the payroll.
Yeah, but they haven't had the last 10 days. It's not on the list, like full of rumors this morning. So that's why
You're lazy.
just for
Right, it's starting.
but it's when I it's not showing on the last 10 days of the fiscal year.
It kind of changed.
But I understand that you have some bills that come in. Obviously, they have some bills that come in July. But payroll is paid. Their people are paid on the last day of the month. That's already come out of their cash and their budget. They're sitting with a cash balance of 2.3 million on June 30th. There's about 161,000 in outstanding checks. And then that leaves, I don't think your anticipated bills is the 2.3 minus the 161,000.
Right.
There's gonna be some carry.
Then the last 10 days of, that's what we have put into the last 10 days of the fiscal year.
So even with this issue from October until now, it's anticipated that there's gonna be carryover dollars.
640,000.
I believe so.
Your payroll's 1.8 million?
And probably around.
Yeah,
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
carryover of 1.8.
Because
No.
July it's
Talking
just
about-
1,094,000.
So the first 10 days of the,
I understand.
so that's about 640,000. And then plus all the bills that's coming, that's gonna be about 1.3 million.
And what's sitting in that account right now?
Yeah.
So what's in there right now?
In what
13
account?
days is a whole nother month.
Right.
So that would be paid,
Uh,
in 10 days.
So
would be
that
paid in
number,
July.
that number that you have now is this number is close to that number. So that number is gonna pay for that payroll. Because the way when I do the budget, when you look at here, this is only for the 20 days.
Because the 10 will be out of a different payroll.
That's for under June.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm just
10
looking
days
at
is
this
not
spreadsheet.
double. That's 1 million.
No,
It's a
because the
2.2.
10 days is here. This is the 20 days.
Yeah,
For
but-
For July 1st
10
to
days is
July.
not gonna almost double this. That's 1 million.
That's,
You're saying
that's
that-
including the full month and the 10 days.
It's not a full month and 10 days, it's a full month. Because it's 20 plus 10.
20 days.
It's
for
not a
one
full
pay
month of
period,
pay
10
plus an
for the
additional
next
10
pay.
days. It's just the way we do our payroll cycle from the 21st through the 20th. You're gonna
That's a
have
whole month.
10 days in July. The paycheck that your employees get at the end of July will be for 10 days that were in the fiscal year of 25 that have to be accounted for out of fiscal year 25 dollars. And then you'll have 20 days that will be taken out from fiscal year 26 dollars. But it's not going to be a full month plus 10 days.
When you look at the expense under full-time salaries, and it listed the monthly, the July through June, and for the month of August through May, that's the full month, that's estimated what we're gonna pay for FTE. Then when you look at the number for July and then the number for June, and you combine those two, that's actually a 2 full months.
Yeah, but they're paid out of 2 different fiscal years.
So
The spreadsheet-
June 1 through June 20 will be paid for, or June 1 through June, I'm sorry, your June 1 through June 20 have already been paid. June 21 through June 30 will be paid for out of fiscal year 25 dollars. July 1 through July 20 will be paid for out of fiscal year 26
Yeah,
dollars.
but the spreadsheet only contemplates 12 months of payroll, though.
right,
I
right.
mean, so he's
But when
already.
you
he's
look at-
already
when you
accounted
look at
for it.
But they're trying to figure out what the lapse is. They're looking at the amount that's in there, and C is trying to deduct a full month plus 10 days from that amount.
When you look at the July number,
You're talking about on the sheet.
The FTE,
Page six, sheet.
look at the full-time salaries for the July number and the June number.
What page is that? See, is that the last page?
The first page.
No, the very first right here.
Okay.
So you can tell this is the full month from August. So for July and June, that's the last, so that's for the last pay period for the year and then the last 10 days of the year is in here.
Yeah.
So this is only for the 20 days. July 1st to July 20. If you add those up, that's the annual.
So what's the monthly salary?
It's the one.
Okay, yes.
1.6.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, I guess if you're trying to type it thing or roll
Yeah.
over, but yeah, it's all accounted for in that number.
Yeah, I think they're looking at lapse rollover dollars.
And just because my understanding is that you're not obligated to do that. I think potentially some of, in my world, we've always had a budget year to year. I mean, and I know you're probably not under that same obligation. So it maybe is some of that, maybe throwing you off with some of the questions potentially. You see what I'm asking? I mean, so because what we're saying, like for example, like we don't close out our years until like September because we expect things to come in that were allocated or encumbered for FY 25 dollars. Sometimes up to 2 or 3 months after. That's why so that's common for us. So I think like what the question is, like what people are asking is that, we're talking about a world where there's carryovers and lapses, whereas I feel like you're running yours more like a business where, it kind of doesn't exist in that world. It's just more of a balance sheet and cash on hand. So, do you see where I'm headed? I mean, is that possibly maybe why there's some issues with, what people are specifically asking as it relates to how much money, if all your bills were paid on June 30th, regardless of when those bills come in, even if they come in December of this year, and you were to allocate those just fiscal year to fiscal year, at the end of June 30th, 2025, how much money would you have left over for that specific year? Do you have that number? Or do you even calculate it that way?
Yeah, it'll be close to 1.3. Yeah, on the income statement, then I put in all the actual number for every month, so it'll be around 1 point after paying all the June bills, but we don't pay until July. That's the
Okay, so regardless of when you pay them, so like I said, because I mean, even in our particular situation, we're going to be paying bills in this month.
yeah. That's
and
why
next month.
I just have to be consistent every month on how I do. That's a pattern because everything is split into 12. And so for the projection, if we pay what we receive for the fiscal year, and then what we will pay for all the actual bills for the fiscal year will be the carryover money will be close to 100,000 or less.
Okay, so you're saying that after all bills paid, let's pretend it's December this year, and when you closed out FY 25, you'll have less than $100,000.
Right, correct. Because my staff member, he's still putting all the final invoices that we have to pay for to get approval next week by the trust.
Christy, are you looking at a different number?
I was on a cash basis. I just looked at what they had in the bank account and then I subtracted off their outstanding, but there could be more invoices coming in that they haven't written checks for. The outstanding are checks written, but they haven't paid. I was going from a cash basis. So the question is, what are the anticipated invoices that you think are coming in for June? And that would be.
So I think
the anticipated ones, where are they at now? That you can tell them.
Oh, I can't tell.
For June,
June.
we're still working on it, and it's going to be around 1.3.
So for any of those anticipated bills that
The
you're going
bills
to
are going to
pay,
be 1.3. Still left.
You're talking about 1.3 that's on next month's invoices, trust me.
Yeah, next week. Yeah.
Thank you.
How much cash is on hand now?
Right now we have about
2.3 million.
Yeah.
On
And
June
then-
30th.
So you're anticipating, because I thought you told Christy something different. So you're anticipating $1.3 million in bills to be billed against the 2.3 million. So a carryover of $1 million, not 1.3 million.
And when we look at the last 10 days, that's why I put it under the different fiscal year, the last 10 days. But when you look at this budget line right here, you can tell that's why the payroll is a lot less than the month before. It was because of the 10 days difference.
Yeah.
So whatever we have, the carryover money will be eventually be paid to cover the payroll and all the bills.
Inflated that.
So I think to Brandon's point, when you guys come over and ask for funding and your process is so much different than what we're all used to around here, it makes it difficult for us to compare apples to apples. And I know others around the table have mentioned this for years. I think, the way we're set up here at the county, we get a budget. It doesn't matter whose office it is. your general fund budget, you get loaded salary dollars, benefit dollars, travel, M&O, and capital. Those dollars are in those 5 accounts. So let's say you have $100,000 in each one of those 5 accounts. If towards the end of the year, you don't need as much in one of those accounts because you're short on employees, then you can't just arbitrarily decide we're going to take those salary dollars and allocate them to an M&O ongoing expense or whatever. And then next year, you're trying to continue that new M&O quest that you did, plus pay for full employment, right? I mean, it seems like, I know this is a crude analogy, but sometimes it feels like the way you guys budget is just a wad of cash out of your pocket. And it's hard to keep track of where you're at. I would think that you would set up an accounting system to where if you do anticipate that you're not going to need as much money in one of your accounts, whether it's salaries, benefits, M&O, capital, or travel, you go back to the trust and say, hey, we've been short on employees by 40 for the year. We've got $2 million of salary dollars that we're not going to need to spend this year. We hope we can spend it next year because we have full employment, but we didn't this year. We want to spend that $2 million on X, Y, and Z, but we need to move it from salary down into M&O or down into capital so that we can do that. And then you get authorization from them to move that money. So there is a tracking system, and you can see exactly where the money was, where it is now, why it's there, and then it helps when we're budgeting the next fiscal year to know where our starting point is.
We are tracking all those numbers every month. And when you look at the monthly trust meeting, I have the year to date compared to the budget. That's how I compare each one where we are for the year, and that it tells you where we are on our spending. And so that's why we know what our unused payroll money and then where it's allocated to. And the only thing that we may not go to trust for everything, it's decision was made with the executive, like if we have to, like for VHS, I think we did get approval from the VHS, for instance, that we have to use extra money to hire VHS to do site check. And we were able to do that because at the time we still have the carryover and we have a cash on hand that's available. And then once we run out the money, that's where we are now. We run out the money. We use up all the money for VHS and then to pay for the medical. And we keep track of everything. I have everything every month, and it's every invoices, everything adds up.
But the problem is that vendor, that's going to be an M&O contract, right? That's not a salary expense. So you have salary savings this year, you're halfway through the year. So you're like, okay, we're going to pay for this service. Then you start the next fiscal year. And if you want to of course, and I get it, you're going to ask for full funding for FTEs, but you're also going to ask for funding for to keep this other contract going.
No, that's why I fixed that. That's why when you see the 5.8 million, and we did fix the professional service.
No, I get it. That's my point. The only way to fix that is to have an increase in your budget. But you may not need that increase in your budget because this fiscal year, if you're just like you were the last fiscal year and the fiscal year before that and the fiscal year before that, and I think the fiscal year before that, which is short on FTEs, so you have that savings to be able to pay for that. That's why we talked about this when we looked at your estimate of needs, which was to take the dollar amount that you were anticipating being short for the year and putting it on the watch list so that we could watch that throughout the year to make a determination later in the year if, in fact, you needed those funds.
So kind of just speak to your point about the analogy that you made. I can't speak to what was done previously, but from the first budget meeting that I came to back in February or March, I think we were doing what you're talking about. We have been in constant communication with the Emergency Streets office to make sure that the way we do things aligns with the rest of the way the rest of the as well. And it's a process. We're getting there. I've been in place since February.
So right now, if you anticipate that you're not going to spend $2 million in salaries, which has happened in the past. Right now, you're saying that if you wanted to enter into an MOU, enter into a contract, which would make it an M&O expense, or if you wanted to go, purchase, HVAC equipment or something like that in the facility, and you wanted to move that $2 million to be able to pay for that, that you would go to the trust and say, we want to move $2 million from our salary account down into our M&O account or into our capital account to make this purchase
That's the problem.
or to enter into a contract with this for this MOU.
Because the way things have been done in the past is exactly what you're saying. I mean, we move money that's meant for salaries to pay for other things. And then when we go back and try to fill those positions that are vacant, we don't have that money to pay those people or to hire those people. And so what we have done, and we've worked hard on this for about the last 3 months, 4 months, something like that, to make sure that we don't end up in that same position going forward.
So you understand that where we're coming from then, right? Because you've had 3 or 4 months trying to do that. We've had 5 years of numbers that are constantly jumping, and we get the sky is falling, the sky is falling, and then it turns out that not only is the sky not falling, it's cloud free because you have a lapse. I shouldn't say cloud free. I didn't mean it like that. But there's not the urgency. Do you agree with that?
I am not a true numbers guy, but I understand enough not to know that we need to do better than what we've done in the past. I recognize that, and we are making every attempt to do just that. That's why we have opened up communications with Marissa Treat's office and getting on board with them about how we need to conduct business as far as financially and make sure that, we have the funds available to do things that we need to take care of both.
So does the majority of the concern, so does the majority of the discrepancy and come at the end of this month or whatever? Is it purely around medical? So based on the presentation, am I to understand that an all-in turnkey cost was $8.9 million, roughly speaking, so the 8.1 plus the 840,000. So $8.9 million all in. And right now, based on one of the previous slides, it looks like the current all-in cost is about a little over 12 million, and that does not include the heritage cost, right?
No, it's included. That's
The heritage cost is included in that.
Was included right now. I think that it's something.
So that number. Sorry, I didn't catch y'all, but I didn't catch y'all.
Well, at some point, we're looking to do something with the heritage.
Okay.
We still have some more investigations to do in that part of it, but until we are more confident about the decision going forward, we don't have anybody really that does what they do. I mean, we have a person that's part-time that does that, so until we can fill that position or get the details worked out for heritage, then we're kind of in catch-22.
Yeah. So turnkey was an all-in cost of about 8.9 million, and then including heritage. See, you're saying that this 7.05 plus the 5 million includes the contract price for Heritage's click rates or whatever they're charging, or is that an additional contract? Because it's on a different line item in the budget.
so the 8.9, and then the salaries is the 705, and then 4.52. Yeah, that's
The math works out like it's at 8.940 for turnkey. And we brought it in-house and it all inclusive 12.074.
Okay, so that does include the heritage. Okay. So when you say heritage paid the 4.52, some of that's their administrative cost built into that. So it's not all offsite.
per transaction of the process, the processing fee. They're charging us
Because that's built into each
$40.
individual medical plan that they do.
Yeah, the
Okay,
$40 per.
Okay.
40 or 45?
$40. I think it's $40.
Somebody said 45 minutes ago.
It was 45 minutes ago.
Okay.
Sorry, it was my bad, that's the nurse thing.
So a couple quick things. So you're showing a difference of 3.13 million more in cost to date, and we're at the end of the fiscal year. So we had October October until now. So next year, you'll have 3 more months in the same situation that you were in this, from October to now.
July, September, October.
Well,
I think
it
they
was in
stopped.
October.
I thought they stopped October 1 in terms of.
Okay, yeah, so July, August, September. So they'll have 3 more months this next fiscal year than they did the previous year. If the difference was 3.13 million, that's 700 and what, $75,000 a year? No, what is that? It's $26,000 a year, something like that. So we're talking $775,000 if we're doing the extra 3 months for this next year. So the cost for the medical would be $775,000 for the next fiscal year versus the current.
The next
fiscal
3
year.
months.
Yeah. The 3.13 from October 1 until now, divide that. Actually, it's gonna be different because I was doing in my head 13 by 12, not by 10. $313, 31. So yeah, so I just don't see where we get to the 5 million. And then my other question is,
That's just the medical cost, and then there's other stuff there, like
but that's also not counting I mean, we do need to offset the 3 months for the savings between the contract. But your footnote here says $1.1 million in unauthorized heritage payments. Can you tell me what?
So I put this slide deck together, and that was what was given to me anecdotally. I wanted to firm that up before I came over here and reported that. So I took that. This was in this slide, and I took it out. I just didn't take it out of the notes because I cannot prove right now that they made those unauthorized payments, nor would I accuse anybody of doing so unless I had the proper.
Potentially. So it's
Potentially. That's correct.
When do you anticipate completing your audit of heritage payments?
Well, I'm not doing an audit.
Well, whoever's doing it.
So, we work for the trust. I don't know what their position would be, but in my opinion, an audit needs to be done. That's what I would recommend. A forensic audit of heritage and turnkeys contracts and the payments that they did or didn't make to hospitals. And all of that needs to be looked at, and whatever the truth is can come out. It's going to take a long time, probably.
So there's currently not something in motion.
Only the desire to get to the bottom of these numbers.
In May, we were told there was something in motion. Now it's not.
Okay, so I don't know who told you what in May, but I understand that our healthcare administrator has been going through the bills, past bills to determine, and what she was looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if it was a pre-existing condition, because we only learned about the statute about 6 months ago. We learned about the statute. Well, the county's not responsible for pre-existing conditions. So when we learned that, then she started to go back through, she or her designee, I can't remember, started going back through the old bills and say, Heritage, why did you pay this? If we're not supposed to be paying it, why did you do that? So it's very initial, and I don't know what the results are at this moment. I don't know what you found yet.
The only thing I can tell you is that we found a lot of bills that were billed to the county incorrect.
Right, but you understand at least some frustration, at least on my part, and maybe others, that we're told in May that we're looking into this, and then today it hasn't started. It's almost a continuation of a pattern, and it's not your fault because things are complicated. I get it. We're told one thing at a certain point in time, and I understand things will change, but then we come back and it's completely different than what we had previously been told. If not,
Well, as we get more information, we have to adjust and change our workflows and.
yeah, but we're talking a significant change here. And then let's just get right to it. How are you broke on July 31st? Are you paying all of your vendors on day one for a full year of service, even though you may not have contracts with them through the full year? Are you paying staff? Right, the statement in the press at which you basically ambushed the budget board and I say you because you all are here, not the trust, was that you were going to be broke on July 31st. That is not a true statement. Or if it is, tell us how.
The statement probably could be worded a little bit differently than what it was. I was just,
Would a more accurate statement be if our projected expenses and our projected revenue holds for the full 12 months of the next fiscal year, we potentially will be short $5 million at the end of the fiscal year?
that probably would have been more.
Okay, I think that would have been probably a little bit more accurate, and I think it would have not set off a bunch of alarm bells that did not necessarily need to be set off, because it's way too early to tell. Do you guys, and I know I think everybody's new except for C may be able to answer this, but on your projection that you're using, and I understand we all use projections, but when you're looking at your salary dollars, part of your analysis of being $5 million short, I'm assuming that was based upon your assumption that you would be fully staffed for the entire fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yes, based
Okay.
on, yeah.
So since you've been there, have you been fully staffed?
No.
Ever? Have you been close to being fully staffed? Ever?
No.
Right. So is it safe to assume that if everything else were to pan out, your estimated revenue streams coming in and your estimated expenses, except for your FTEs, that a lot of any shortage would be taken care of from the money that the county gives you every year for employees that you don't have?
We've been working on the payroll budget for the last 3 months since and what we come up with these numbers is because right now we have about 20 to 30 VHS employees that we're paying to do site check, but we don't have enough detention officer to do that. And when I did this budget, I have that 30 position put over to the payroll. That way it will show that we have this unused payroll money that we are using that to pay VHS right now. So when the actual numbers comes in, and you will see what we're paying VHS, the professional other services, and then you see a lower actual payroll money, and it offset each other.
What's your contract termination procedure for that VHS contract?
I think it's 90 days.
So if somehow somebody could wave a magic wand and tomorrow you were fully staffed, and being fully staffed, you would have the staff to do the site checks, then you would have to pay for 3 months out of the fiscal year for them to do something that you don't need them to do. Is that a fair statement?
We're watching it, we're tracking it. We have a captain that's managing the VHS employee. So between knowing how much money that we are projected to be unused, and then we'll make sure that we use that money to pay VHS within the budget so that we're not exceeding our budget.
I would make the suggestion that you guys look at most of our standard contracts, MOUs and otherwise with the county, have 30-day termination provisions in them for these particular instances.
I think
90
you're right.
days is,
Yeah, I think you're right. For the days for the VHS contract, that was all negotiated prior to me. We had looked at.
well, you'll need to renegotiate it for the next fiscal year. So,
Hopefully we won't.
well,
That's what I mean, that's the language right now. You do not have to do it.
well,
In my personal business, I never stop my contract on June 30th.
well, I mean, I guess it depends on what the terms are on their contract, if their contract. I'm just going by the county. We have to terminate all of our contracts at the end of the fiscal year and then, begin them again at the beginning of the next fiscal year. You guys may be doing your contracts different.
I mean, I would actually suggest the opposite. I mean, getting a 5-year contract for somebody gives you a much bigger price break than doing it year to year.
Well, but we do 5-year contracts over here, but we just do
But they're not real.
but we do the
Anticipated renewals with
annual
the known
renewal
cost.
assumptions.
Yeah, there's no cap on what we pay them. It's based on how many officers we have hired during each month. So we're reviewing, and then all the officers that we have, we hire, and then how many we have, and then we'll reduce the VHS employee. the same time, so maybe adjustment. So we're monitoring that.
So you could theoretically reduce the employees to one employee for 90 days.
Yeah, I think what the idea is that if we get a detention officer hired, then we're gonna lose them. We're gonna cut that VHS person out, one for one, until we get them all in place, because it's costing.
To go back to my question though, on July 31st, you will not be broke.
No, they will.
No,
No, I want to hear from
No.
them.
No.
Chrissy.
no, based on the cash flow.
So this situation today that we're all here for is not anything that, as Cody said, out of the ordinary, but for you all saying you're going to be broke on July 31st.
And we're not going to be broke. We just will not have enough money to pay our monthly bills based on the monthly revenue that we receive.
At some point in the
Year.
later part of the fiscal year, if projections that have never played out the way you anticipated this time of the year actually did pan out the way you thought. You always, I'm saying, you always anticipate all of your salary dollars being spent on employees, a full FTE count for all 12 months of the fiscal year. You always anticipate that at this particular moment, and I get that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but not understanding that you never been there and trying to, send out a statement that indicates that the sky is falling in 30 days when it's not falling in 30 days, because you have the track record to know that even if the sky does fall, we're talking May of 2026, not August 1 of 2025. And historically that you don't have all of those expenditures because you're never fully staffed. So you have wiggle room in there. So not only was it disingenuous from a timing standpoint, it was disingenuous from just your historical knowledge of your budget. Is that the correct statement?
We did have room and then payroll. That's a problem that we have with payroll. And it's not a secret anymore previously. And that's why we've been working on the last 3 months to fix the payroll budget. To know exactly how many positions we need and how much unused money we are projecting. That way we can pay VHS to do the job.
You don't know those numbers?
We have that number now.
You haven't known those numbers when you presented them to us in the past?
Oh, we have that number. It's just after when the budget was approved, that things that happen internally that there's some adjustment, and then we have to keep track on everything. We have to move the money like how we use the money to cover other. And the last time we received a supplement was from 2 years ago for the differences of all the MOU and contract. And that was the last time that we received that money. And for FY25, we are able to balance our budget even with all the increased costs. And we were able to balance our budget is because of the 2.5 carryover money, and then the 750,000 Oklahoma City finally paid us from FY24, and Oklahoma City paid us for last fiscal year, which is 1.2 million. And then that's how we were able to balance our budget. We did not come to the county to ask for any supplement money during that time, and because we were able to cover that. And when Chief Timmons came in, and he was able to negotiate it with Oklahoma City, and then to have them pay us, and they're current on your bill. That's why we balance our budget.
So the city is current.
Yes.
And what do you expect to see from them
That's still
this revenue?
So
Yeah, they've been pretty busy the last few weekends, so we haven't really had a chance to talk much, and I anticipate hopefully this week or next week we'll be able to get back to the table. Start talking about the contract.
Paul,
Now that the,
folks,
go ahead.
we do or we don't have a contract for the current FY.
We do not. They have a copy of it, but I haven't heard.
Okay, so Oklahoma City is not current then, because we're still continuing to accept. Is that a fair statement? That's an accurate statement, okay? Oh, in your negotiations with them, are you looking at a rate increase that will pick up some of these costs, or we expect it to foot those costs for Oklahoma City as we've done in the past?
I've given the numbers to them that were given to me in Colorado for the first day and days subsequent to that. And, that number didn't change a whole lot from last year to this year.
These individuals that we're talking about, these are municipal prisoners,
Yes, unless they're there on the state property.
right? And so those that are strictly municipal, without a contract, are we obligated to hold them?
Yes, until we get an order of release. Either,
Municipal prisoners that are not double charged with because that's a trick that you can use to make the county cover costs, is charge somebody municipally and with a state charge. So we're obligated, absent a contract, to continue to hold municipal prisoners for Oklahoma City.
if we get a release form, either an OR or whatever their bail is on, they get on that.
And then
So
medical,
if you have an OKC police officer bring somebody in on only a municipal charge, there's no state charge at all, you're saying that you are required to accept that municipal detainee?
It's a lawful arrest, yeah.
and on municipal, I understand the state charge aspect. Yeah. On these municipal individuals, how does the medical care aspect work?
That's a good question. How does it work? Yeah.
So prior to them coming in, the bill is on the patient essentially.
Right.
But once they get booked in, they're ours.
So the cost that we're receiving, that Oklahoma City is paying or should pay, or any municipality for that matter, does it currently include a prorated medical? I mean, you've got staffing costs, you've got food costs, you've got medical costs. What other fixed costs are? I mean, let's just go with those three.
I know there's.
Are we collecting enough to actually cover our expenses?
We have the NGT consulting that did the study.
Okay.
But that's looking at it on an average. So if you have somebody booked in on just a purely municipal charge, and I think Donna had mentioned HIV medication and how expensive that is. On a MGT study, that's going to spread those charges across a huge amount of the population that doesn't have it. But we've got a specific individual in on a specific municipal charge, no state charge. I think what Joe's getting at is, are you contemplating those medical expenses to be paid for by the arresting agency? And I would suggest that you have your legal counsel look into that, because my understanding is you do not have to, if it's a purely municipal charge, you are not required to detain that individual.
I think going back and forth with that, that has come up in conversation. And the majority of the time when they bring in a district prisoner, they don't stay more than 10, 15 days at the most, maybe.
But that's 10 to 15 days that it sounds like we're footing the food bill, we're absorbing the medical care and the liability for that, right, without being fully reimbursed at our actual cost.
And I believe the MGT study, or it may have been another one, but indicates that the first few days of somebody being in are the most expensive days that somebody's in, because of all the stuff that the costs that occurred on the front end, right? So they're only here 7 or 10 days versus 30 days. I think that's kind of a misnomer.
But the bottom line is, we can't deny patient access to a community standard.
But the question is though,
So
if somebody's in on a municipal charge only, and to Joe's point, I mean, there's state charges that can be filed and you have to take them. But if it's a municipal charge only,
So I know
you don't
larger
necessarily have to.
institutions that do their business a little differently, that would curtail it. So, I'm in Oklahoma.
Sometimes we don't have a choice. Whenever a municipal judge says they want somebody help, we don't have a choice. If they want them incarcerated, We have to hold them.
I don't believe that is true if it's a municipal only charge.
Sometimes the judge does require for them to be seen.
So the,
Even
the
if it's
taxpayers of
affected
Oklahoma
harm.
County are subsidizing the cost of incarcerating Oklahoma City municipal prisoners because of an Oklahoma City municipal judge's order.
You
Not
got
only
citizens
that,
of
it's
Edmond,
also-
citizens of Midwood City, Dell City, Choctaw, Luther, Jones, War Acres, Bethany, whoever that are having to pay those expenses because a municipal judge for Oklahoma City. I think I would go back to your legal counsel and have them look at that. I think you might get a different answer.
Well, you can say the same thing to DLC. I mean, we've had,
Well, and I wanted to get there.
DOT is at least a state statute.
Mhm.
Right, they have the blanket protection. But the backups, how is that process working? Are you receiving timely payment? Because once the JNS is, if I'm remembering this correctly, once the JNS is filed and they're in the custody of DOC, they're to pay is it 100% of the cost?
you know, I think they have
Or is it,
they pay, I think it's $27.
$27 a day.
So let me try to back into Joe's question, because I think there might be some confusion with how the obligation based on contract only about, so what's required by law. So let's say that you've got an Edmond detainee that comes in who has a state charge, and the state charge is disposition to a point that they're able to release from state custody or county custody, but they still have an Edmond hold. Do you all continue to hold them, or do you call Edmond to say, hey, get them because it's time for you to take them over?
When they get released from the state charge, we usually call them,
Okay.
and they'll come and get them.
So in that case, but there's no obligation for you to continue to hold, right? I mean, 'cause at some point you're, in my mind, actually holding them unlawfully.
Right.
So,
So whenever we get notified of this position of state charge, places like that, and I know they have their own facilities, so that when they have somebody there for a municipal hold, they'll come and pick them up.
yeah,
And
But just because an entity doesn't have their own facility, like Edmond or Midwood City, does not push the requirement onto the county to hold a municipal only detainee.
unless, we're ordered to.
that's a new one.
A district judge or a judge that's here in the courthouse, that's,
Another
But
point
then
that Joe
is
had
the
brought up,
municipality paying for it? If they're ordering it.
does Oklahoma City still have a competitor that's actually that is that call?
No, gone long ago.
So what happens in a scenario where, I mean, I don't want to sound like Uncle Rico, but back in the day, I mean, whenever we had a detainee that had some sort of significant problem that was only a municipal hold, we would just walk back to the city lieutenant back there. She or he, either the lieutenant or the captain, within minutes, like we'd have to release it and they'd be out the door. Is that still something that y'all are able to do in the event y'all get those wild, you know, those HIV positive?
When I was at the
patients?
city, I never had to do that.
Yeah.
When I put a lot of people in the jail, I never had to do that. But I do know that when we have anybody come in, whether it's a state or municipal, and they're ill, they don't need to be there. Logan is on the phone to the judge. And that's how it's working right now.
The city judge.
I don't know if that has come up. I don't know.
Yes, well, he has called the city judges, and like I said before, there are some judges with the city that say they want them to stay in jail until they can be seen by that judge, or until they can post a bond.
Well, we have those cases too, of course. I mean, you know, depending on the type of charge, but I just didn't know if there was a mechanism for y'all to try to assuage some of that giant medical liability that.
Yeah, and today, I'll ask our legal team to look at that, because if that's an option for us, we need to use it.
I think those cases are few and far between.
More so the city than,
I mean, what's your ADP for city? 40? What's the?
for city charges only,
It was small with us.
it was very small, it's pretty small. Usually, their deal is like, if the state charge gets dropped, then they know they're paying for that guy or that lady from there forward, so they have a motivation to get them out too.
Yeah.
And I don't think they stay very long after this.
come up with.
So if you had,
Go ahead, Brian.
let's say that everything, let's say you were, speaking, 100% staff for all of FY '26, and all of your contracts came in at the negotiated price. Would you have any idea here today what your outlook would be on June 30th of 2026? So what I mean is that when you take all your money in, all your money out, how much money would you have left, or how much would you be short June 30th of 2026? You see what I'm asking? So if you were just to extrapolate
There's still a
out.
lot of questions to be answered.
Sure.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of like what we receive from Oklahoma City and what we can do to fix the medical bills. And those are big numbers that will reflect on the budget. And that's the main thing that we are working on right now.
But the problem is you issued a press release already, outlining a specific date and a specific dollar amount.
Right.
Now we're asking you to give us a good indication for the end.
And this is the projected numbers, that's the updated number that I provided this morning. That's the number that we share with the public. Yeah.
So it would be, if everything were to go as planned, a fully staffed, you're saying you'd be $5.8 million short June 30th, 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Which, what frustrates me is the situation's not any different than when really, it's not much different. I shouldn't say any different. It's not much different than when we looked at the estimate of needs initially. And we indicated, yeah, there might be an issue, so we're going to put that on the watch list and we're going to continue to monitor it. We don't know what your FTE count's going to look like, but even though you've not been fully staffed since the trust really took over, the county has saw fit to give you the budget for all of those employees at the beginning of the fiscal year. But what we said was we'd put it on the watch list and continue to monitor it, right? And then there's a press release that goes out that says the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We're going to have to shut the doors on August 1 if we don't get $5-ish million. And then it turns out, we move heaven and earth to come in here for almost 2 hours thus far to have a meeting about this. And we look at these numbers, and it's basically the same thing we looked at a few months ago. And we said, we understand, we're going to watch it, we're going to monitor it, and we're going to work on things. And we've got September supplement coming up. And as you get further through the fiscal year and you have a better indication of where you're going to be, then we can look at if there's going to need to be supplemental funding. And if there is, how we're going to be able to achieve you getting that supplemental funding, right? That's what we talked about.
Great. Question. In the press release, and I think maybe in the document you said the FTE number was 392. Not you, someone.
Yes.
Okay. When the trust took over, I think the number was 400. It was 400, and the trust made an arbitrary decision to use the money at 400 to go to 380.
No, it was initially it was talked about 340, and then it was 320. They said we can never be fully staffed at 400, so we're going to take the salary and benefit dollars from 320 to 400. So basically 80 FTE positions. We're going to spread that across 320 employees, and now we're going to be a 320 FTE organization. Without coming to the county, without any of that, that was the arbitrary decision made. And otherwise, we had funded it at the 400 mark.
So is 392 at the actual number?
392 is what we have wrapped our arms around and determined that 392 is our total authorized FTE count. Because before we started looking at that in February, March, when I got into a position where I could take a look at everything, I don't know that anybody knew.
Does that 392, does that include the medical employees that you are now employing full time that were not included in the 320 because you had a medical contract providing those services?
The 392 includes all medical.
Okay, so I think moving forward, we really, I don't know about anybody else, but I need a breakdown because we're used to looking at a medical contract that's providing all of those services and then 320 FTEs to provide all of the other services. So I think when we jump to 392, it looks like, oh, they're fully staffed, right? But that's not the case because the 392 is including employees that were never contemplated before.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think somebody else asked the question, how many do we have working there now? We're 343. We're 50 down, 50 positions down. I can break that down even further. I can show you those numbers.
And that number that you're at today, staff-wise, where has that been?
Historically,
Just go back like the last 6 months of the previously concluded year.
Well, when they did their report in the last GA meeting, it was 340. When they were here giving us their budget, they said 320. I mean, it just.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is you issue a press release saying 392. It's really 343. To Cody's point that he's talked about ad nauseum, there is savings in salary. And
that's the number for the FY 26. And that saving, that's what we will be using it to pay the contract VHS employee.
I understand that. But you're not filling the contract employees at a 1-for-1 rate, are you?
you mean okay,
The
so
VHS people.
yeah, correct.
So you're, let's say it's 392, so you're at 343.
Right.
So you have.
We have 29 openings.
You have 49 VH.
No. They don't perform like those openings that we have the 50, we have a captain, a chief, a clerk.
So even at paying that contract for those people that are doing the site checks, you're still realizing savings over your projected staff costs per month.
Yes, and out of that salary savings, we're supplementing the contractors and using that money to pay the contractors instead, and they cost more. That's what was set up before.
So you're getting 30 people at the cost of 43 regular people, 43 full-time FTE. They're costing us that much.
The vacant position is not all detention officers.
Yeah, I mentioned that to him. So we have 29 detention officer openings.
Okay.
I think we have 21 VHS contractors. So yeah, that is they cost way more than a regular full-time employee.
VHS,
Yeah.
paying them way higher than even with a full-time detention officer paid with a family help premium, and it's more paying them more than what it's costly.
So Greg, sometime, and I know you're not a finance person, but you're the one standing at the podium.
Sure.
I would like, and I don't know about anybody else, but I would like a breakdown of your positions as far as those associated with the 320 versus the medical side. That way we know when you're talking to us about, we have X number of employees, because I know in the past we've been concerned that even when you have 320 and you say we're short, we have 260 employees, so we're 60 short. But of those 260, half of them were designated, not quite half, but pretty close to half were designated as clerks. So our concern was you may not be heavy on clerks, but when you only have 260, that kind of seems heavy on clerks, right? So if we know the breakdown of how many of the 320 are the normal set of detention officer staff versus the medical side, since we don't have a contract, it'll help us wrap our heads around where we're coming from.
Sure. I think we have that now.
Thank you.
Take a couple months to get it, but we do.
I really appreciate you standing up there. I know you're not the CFO and you've answered a lot of questions that I think are outside your normal day to day.
That's true. I can only tell you what I know, and I'm willing to tell you everything I know.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, it might be more for Steve. When you present us with this budget today, is that out of
This one? This is Excel spreadsheet. Well, this one?
Do you get it out of Munis or your?
No, it's just Excel spreadsheet. That's what we put on.
I know, where do you get the information?
Oh,
Out of Munis or your
from
QuickBooks?
well, because I reconcile both QuickBooks and Units every month, and then so that number. Yeah, that's what I got.
Would it be possible to get estimated needs forms with the new budget? Because that does give the breakdown that Cody's asking
Right.
for.
Yeah, because I won't have time to update this
Yeah.
this year. That's
And
why I had to
then
bring you this list.
What I would suggest, I mean, I fill it out like with your new numbers, and then maybe another page with all the medical.
Yeah, we
on
have
it,
we
like
have the breakdown.
FTEs, office supplies, everything, the heritage.
Yep, I have
So
all.
we can get
I
a
have
real
all that
snapshot.
information.
I mean, we've learned today, obviously, they're fine for June. I brought in a budget today that's showing they're gonna end up with 130,604. They will not be negative. I think we carry on with, when we meet tomorrow, we can lower the watch list to 5.8. We carry on, it looks like they do have carryover of about $1 million. And we address this more in our normal course of business for September.
So you think they have $1 million in carryover? So they said they're gonna be 5.1 short, right? Is it, am I remembering that correctly in the press release?
I'm looking at their budget today. So
Yeah.
they've got 100, we're fine for June, we're positive. The $1 million can help offset this, they can work on the billing. They've got the FTE padding.
I'm a simple numbers guy. So you got 5.1 is what they said they were gonna be short, July 31st. They're gonna carry over 1.1, so that's 4.1. We had $1.1 million.
Oh, you're looking at it on an annual.
Yeah.
I'm looking at
Oh, I'm
it for the
sorry.
next
Yeah,
3
no.
months off of this.
So
They can get by till September, and then we can reevaluate. Get more information and go from there.
Right now, we don't have the carryover money.
You have 2.3 in cash. You said
Right.
you're gonna spend 1.3.
Right, but when you look at this fiscal year budget, the 2.3 is gonna be next week. The bills that we're gonna pay is gonna be 1.3 million. It will come off that.
Right.
So what's left, when you look at the budget that I presented on the first page. So look at this number. Why it's smaller than that? Because of
Right, you're showing that you're gonna be 443. Wouldn't the $1 million help cover that? And cover that much?
no, basically after what we pay, and then because that
You have no carryover up here.
Right.
Right?
right.
You're fine for June. We have 2.3 in cash, you're gonna spend 1.3 of it. Where's that $1 million?
That million is right here. See, it's not showing in here because this is last. Look at July. The full time is way less because that's only for 20
No, I
days.
understand that's July 1st, but where's the $1 million? Shouldn't it be up here in your carryover to make more revenue to offset these expenses? Yes.
The answer to that question is yes, see. I'll just help you.
So based on the information we've heard today, even that it may change, the 5.8 million number, the $5 million that we're short now has been whittled down to 3.5-ish. Right, and that's not counting in consideration staffing, vacancies, et cetera. And I understand you're paying a contract at a higher rate. There's still gonna be money.
Maybe
That-
go after that heritage stuff.
And it doesn't include, does the projection include revenue from Oklahoma City?
It does.
It does, okay.
Are there any new anticipated revenues? It's not.
So yes, we need to watch your budget.
we're still not, based on what we're gonna spend monthly. And I think we need to make clear about the carryover money, how it's,
Well, I'm gonna trust what Christie says.
You told me you need to spend 1.3 million out of your fiscal year 25 money still,
Right.
right? You've got 2.3 sitting in the bank.
right. So this is the estimate for the 10 days, plus this is for the 20 days.
See, I understand that. I'm saying you've got a carryover.
So,
that
right,
You could plug a
right.
million on the revenues.
Right. If you plug in here, you have to plug in here too.
The 1.3 is only for M&O expenses.
Because the first one is only showing a 20 days, you have to plug the 10 days in here.
Your 10 days is on your June.
Right, that's why it's not showing in Munis yet. I just pulled it this morning before I left.
So the 10 days of June payroll, you're saying also needs to come out of that 2.3.
Right.
Which is where you get the $321,000 at the end of the sheet.
Right, yeah, that's all the carryover should be, the actual number.
Well, but even that 300 whatever thousand minus that 1.1 is more than the.
No, the 321,000 is what he's saying what you'll have left over after paying the $1.3 million in M&O expenses and the 10 days of payroll.
Yeah.
So from the 2.3, 1.3 comes out of it plus the 10 days of payroll, which based on that number is going to be about 600,000.
650,000.
Well, that would get you through August.
Right, so that's why by end of July, we're still good. And then August, because of the revenue that we receive, it's not gonna be enough to cover our monthly expenses.
It'll get you through August if it's 650. Because you're only gonna be short 440, 443,
Right, but the
737.
carryover is gonna be 300.
It's like 600 and something now.
And again, these are all projection of the deal that's coming and based on projection, yeah.
Well, and once again, I've mentioned this. If it's a cash flow issue, we can look at allocating 2 months worth of budget at a time, once, twice, 3 times, whatever it is, instead of a 1 month allocation. If it's a cash flow issue,
We've done that in the past,
we
right?
have done that.
At the end of the fiscal year.
At the end of the
not
fiscal
during
year.
cash flow. Now,
Right.
if we want to do the August, pay it in July, I can make that work. And the only reason we can make that work is because there's extra money still sitting in general fund reserve, those ongoing funds. If I didn't have that there, it would be really tight. But we can front them some cash. Not give them more cash today.
Right.
But front
Giving
some.
them cash to help the cash flow issue doesn't mean you have more money to
Right.
spend.
Right, no,
Right.
I still
Well-
monitor what we spend but if it's at that trend to the end of the year, that's where we'll be ending up with short money to pay all our expenses.
Kurt, you have said that the audit of heritage is something that was not necessarily started, but something that you would like to do. Correct?
Yes. I have done.
Well, yeah.
Paul, is that something we can get a commitment from you guys? Is that the next time that we meet, we have some form of progress report on that?
I think so.
Well,
Just have to find an NB that we want to do it.
Paul, technically we meet tomorrow, so.
Next,
No, that's
the
The one after.
I will say this, we've been working for a short amount of time, and we are discovering a lot of things that was unknown. We're uncovering it and we're trying to work through it and make it better. One of the reasons that we reached out to so many different county entities about the problems that we're having over there. And we're trying to do right. We're trying to be as transparent, Greg and I and Steve, we have all talked that, when it comes to spending other people's money, I'm more cautious than ever about that. More cautious than I am about spending my own money in particular. Um, we don't have anything to hide, and we want to be as transparent as possible when it comes to that, and show where the dollars are being spent, what they're being used for. We have spent the last 3, 4 months, I think, trying to figure out what money's been spent, where, how it was spent. And we have gone back and just an extremely hard amount of work, trying to figure out what the positions are, what's being paid, what we need, what we don't need, trying to figure out and justify how we can fill one position versus another position, which is more critical to the operation and success of the facility. And that's a tough decision to make sometimes, because I know that there's a dire need for medical staff. There's also a dire need for detention officers. And without one, the other doesn't function as it should. And trying to balance that need between the two and how we can get both of them taken care of as best we can to meet that community standard of care. Is a challenging decision.
Well, I agree. I appreciate your efforts thus far.
Well, and there's not always some of the decisions that I've had to make concerning both of those areas. They haven't been popular by any means. But I had to try to weigh what is best. You take that into consideration, what's in the best interest of the facility and inmates there. And like I said, it's a challenge. It can be a challenge. But I think that my staff and I, we're up to the challenge, and we try to meet that challenge, and we do the best that we can with the resources that we have, and we try to make sure that we make sound decisions with the resources and are fiscally responsible with the resources that we have.
Well, thank you.
Do we have anything else? Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
You want to finish the presentation? You're gonna go like sign 3.
I can do that, or I can just make a summary statement. I will say that the people that are in this room here today are not the problem. We're here to solve the problem. And every time we turn over a rock, there's something that I have a lot of questions about, honestly. And I don't care. I don't care who gets upset over what, or somebody. Okay, I have no more friends. That's fine. I'm fine with that. All I care about is the truth. And in my opinion, this might be my last day of working when I say this, but in my opinion, I think that we could align more with the county, because I think a lot of the conflict here is just a misunderstanding of how these finances are handled for the trust, and then the finances that you guys are all used to at the county. And I think there's a lot of questions there and a lot of gap that could be closed just by us just doing it the way you do, because we're all working in Munis. I know that's a commonality. I just think that it just makes more sense, because when it's like being run like a business, this is the county. Those are two different kind of financial processes in my limited knowledge. But I do understand counties are kind of like a bottom line budget, but then businesses kind of project towards the end of whatever they're going to, and they can move money around easier than a county can. It's probably for a reason that I don't, it's transparency. And like CEO Tim has said, it is what it is. We're going to give you the information. This is a different crew. This is not the old crew. I don't sign on to that old way of thinking. We're all on the same team here. And I don't want to cost the county taxpayer of Oklahoma County any more money than they need to be paying. I don't like waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't think anybody in here does. And we have put in a lot of hours scraping through these figures, putting them on a spreadsheet, because numbers don't lie. And I'll be happy to share that with you. We're still trying to get our hands around this. And and make a turn for the better. Because it's a big thing for anybody in law enforcement to be accused of stealing any money or with, mismanaging money, and I take that extremely seriously. I wouldn't be up here at all if, I wouldn't be working here if I saw some corruption. I've left good jobs before because of that. I'm not gonna be a part of that. I've gone on too long. Would you like me to finish the slides, or are we?
They're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I think the biggest thing was we wanted to make sure that you weren't gonna be shuttering the doors at the end of July because you were gonna be short on cash. And I think we got the answer straight from you guys that that's not the case. That it could be the case at the end of this fiscal year. Correct me if this statement is wrong, but it could be the case at the end of this fiscal year if you're fully staffed, if all of your revenue projections hold true and your expenditure projections hold true, you could need a supplement of cash in the $5 million range to finish out this entire fiscal year, but not finish out this entire month.
Yeah, like I said before, I think it's just it's apples to oranges, and we need to be apples to apples.
Correct. Yeah. So we still have time because we put a dollar amount on the watch, or we haven't created a watch list yet, but that was part of our budget recommendation to budget board. We will be creating our FY26 BET watch list tomorrow in our regularly scheduled meeting here at 1:30. And this is one of the things that we're putting on the watch list to be able to keep an eye on through the fiscal year so that something doesn't come to us as a surprise. But we would anticipate and hope that as we move forward, that you guys would keep us in the loop on some of these financial concerns that you have, keep us up to date on the audit, non-audit, whatever it is that you're looking at on some of the heritage billing, and let us know if there's any way that we can help.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any more questions from me?
Does anybody have anything?
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
If not, is there a motion to receive the report?
So moved.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Aye.
Got a motion, and a second to receive the report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Timmons, Greg C., Donna, guys, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Is there any citizens that signed up to participate? Seeing none, board comments, District 2,
Thank you all again.
County Clerk,
Thank you.
District 3,
Thank you.
District 1,
Thank you for your time and answering the tough questions. I appreciate it.
Treasurer's Office,
Yeah, thank you very much.
Court Clerk, Assessor,
Thank you.
Sheriff. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. See here, is there a motion to adjourn? You got dueling motions. A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks everyone for your time.